Hi everyone, welcome to Digimon Seekers, Chapter 4, Part 8, Sons of Chaos Seekers. So let's go ahead and begin with the first quote. Ryodimon was also laid out, though that wasn't a new development. Logomon and Dormon lay inside the stone circle, as did Kosuke and Yolin's holoized forms. The system's shutdown must have knocked everyone unconscious. The interfaces on each of the prototype Digimon were still lit, but they were slowly dimming. Logomon, Ichi shouted. The light in Logomon's interface went out, and they lost consciousness. The light returned to the interface a moment later, signaling a reboot. This time, however, the interface was executing a ton of unintelligible code. What? Kosuke's voice began to tremble. He kept trying to restart his virtual monitor, only for it to crash each time, spewing a long string of error messages across his field of view. The source code decryption process had been cancelled without warning at the worst possible time. So as always, I like to pick out quotes that really emphasizes aspects about the characters, and I've said this multiple times, but I think Digimon really shines the best when it demonstrates the care between the partner and the human, between the partner and their Digimon partner. Oh, between the human and their Digimon. Excuse me. I love how EG's noticing, even though they're all in a predicament currently, EG's not just thinking about himself, he's making sure to also think about his partner. And he is noticing a small detail about the interface, how it was still on but slowly going out, but then it rekindled, signaling a reboot. Those kinds of minor details one will not notice if they're not paying attention. Like, for example, if you're walking with your dog, typically your dog walks fine every day, but what if all of a sudden they kind of start limping a little bit? Not in an obvious manner, but just limping in such a way where you wouldn't have noticed if you weren't keeping an eye on your dog. They still would have been able to keep pace with you, but if you don't constantly look, then you wouldn't see that their hind leg, something was wrong with that leg, right? Just that element where EG's paying attention, not just focusing about himself, but also about his partner Digimon. And then beyond that, though, I also like Kosuke. So when he says what, it's obviously in regards to the tool that he was working with. But even though it's not in regards to Doromon specifically, I like this line a lot. Kosuke's voice began to tremble. It doesn't specify tremble for what, and it doesn't specify either just because the writers didn't think it was prudent to highlight, or, and I like to think this is the reason, they left it open for interpretation on purpose. They were aware they could have clarified his voice is beginning to tremble. Was it for anxiety, nerves, fear? He was scared, but instead they wanted to leave that open for interpretation. Anger, because he's upset, the shock. For me personally, I would argue that Kosuke's voice began to tremble. I think it's a little bit, fear a little bit, because he's gotten so far, and he's the whole purpose of the Sons of Chaos, the group of Tartarus, of him taking up that monkey ear, was to save Saya, was to locate the Black Agumon. And so when his voice begins to tremble, it's maybe not fear so much as just hopelessness, or approaching hopelessness. But I also like his reaction too. He kept trying to restart his virtual monitor, only for it to crash each time, spewing a long string of error messages. I just like that detail just because it just really shows how determined he is. If it just would have failed once and then he would have given up, I think that would have emphasized the hopelessness, that he truly did lose all hope, but he still has that fighting spirit, and so he tries multiple times, even though it's crashing each time. But yeah, moving forward, did you tamper with Ryodimon? Yolin asked, alarmed. It's part of a suite of research tools implemented in each Digimon, in each of your Digimon linkers. Did I not mention all this when I gave them to you? The professor said nonchalantly. EG looked at his wrist. The Digimon linker was full of spyware. The constant health monitoring and logging of Logomon's progress wasn't just for EG's benefit, it was getting beamed back to DDL. I can also forcibly take control of the Digimon if need be. Even if you're mind-linked, research requires safeguards. Wouldn't you agree? For example, if a valuable prototype were to, say, go berserk and turn into a Hell Logomon, that would be rather unfortunate, wouldn't it, EG? Professor Rijinji turned toward EG, whose jaw went slack. Will you consider your Digimon are my tools, and I manage them as I see fit? Do I make myself clear? So, Let's go ahead and right off the bat, let's talk about the professor. So it is looking like Professor Ruzenji is going to be the antagonist, the force that's pushing back against the main characters. Well, he's not even pushing back against them. Never mind. He was using them. He was the puppeteer. But I'm sure eventually the group is going to start fighting against him once the full plan is revealed. I'm not going to lie with everyone. I am a little bit disappointed with that with that reveal. I was really hoping that because Digimon does have a bit of a history with the mad scientist trope. Does it have a history? I know for sure in Digimon Savers. And I don't know if I count Gemini, because if one recalls from Adventure 2, there was a group of Gemini. So no, never mind. I guess it's not a history. It was done once, at the very least, with Digimon Savers. And I did really like that professor, that villain. I believe his name was Professor Kurota. I personally think he was probably the best Digimon villain that we've had so far. But I was hoping they'll go away from that trope with this story just because, again, they've already done it once already. And I know it's a popular trope beyond Digimon as well. Not just within anime, manga, but just in storytelling in general. So I was just really hopeful that the professor was a good individual. He was on their side. But what really confuses me, and I kind of want to reread the beginning parts of the story. I haven't reread anything. The only time I read these is for my own enjoyment. And then when I look for the quotes that I want to share with you guys. But I could have sworn that he really seemed to have loved Digimon. Was it not him that would remind us, the readers, that Digimon were alive, sentient? It really seemed like he did care about the Digimon. That was an aspect that I really did appreciate about his character, his characterization. So for him to say at this last quote, "What you consider your Digimon are my tools, and I manage them as I see fit. Do I make myself clear?" I'm not gonna lie, I feel like the story in general kind of shifted a bit. Around the point when EG starts working with Kosuke directly, when Kosuke visits him at his home, and I talked about this a little bit, that shift from treating Digimon as friends, as individuals, beings who want to cooperate, and it kind of shifted to treating Digimon as tools. Even one of the audience members aptly pointed that out, and then I agreed with them. They left a comment about that, and I don't like that just because. Again, I really love it. I feel like Digimon shines the best when it emphasizes the relationship between the human and the digital partner. And I just loved how the professor seemed to have acknowledged this, but as it turns out, it was all just for show. He does view Digimon as tools, and he just sees the digital world and Digimon, digital monsters, as a way to push his career, his professional life forward. And we'll come to that shortly. But going back to the quote specifically, again, I love how Yolene, it's a small line, but did you tamper with Ryurimon? Again, that concern for their partners. I love how it shines through. So we see it with EG in the last quote, and now we're seeing it with Yolene. And I love that detail. She asked, alarmed. Right? She's really caring, and she's really worried about Ryurimon. Also like the reveal about the Digimon Linker Strap, because I know obviously it is product placement, but typically when it comes to product placement, it's usually something good, right? Something you want to have because, it quote unquote makes one's life better, quote unquote. In this instance, though, as it turns out, it's literally, as EG points out, it's spyware. It's meant to, it is doing what it's supposed to do, keeping track of fitness of the wearer, but it also sending that information back to where it was created. Kind of like real life, right? We hear stories about how technology is listening in, like TVs and everything like that. Then you have the Alexas, Cortanas, and the Googos that are also quote unquote on. But anyways, yeah. I also like the realization that the professor was aware about Logomon going berserk. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think. Or maybe EG did share that incident with the professor, because that was the whole reason why Leon went mind leak. That was the whole reason why Leon went DMIA to begin with. Anywho, but just the fact that he was completely aware and he could have confronted EG anytime he wanted to, I think that's a really interesting tidbit, a really interesting detail, and yeah, really good to show how the professor really was pulling the strings in the background. He could have stepped in. I wouldn't be... Well, yeah, he's getting information. So this means he's also getting info about the Digipolice and about the Sons of Chaos too, right? Oh, this means that the professor lied too, because I think at the beginning of the story, he was saying how he wanted to discover the Sons of Chaos Go. Well, he obviously knew it was to save Saya. But yeah. And then lastly, the whole shift from a good individual to the bad villain. How the professor's speaking nonchalantly, right? In other words, as if he doesn't care. And just the way that his last statement, will you consider your Digimon are my tools and I manage them as I see fit? Do I make myself clear? Just really emphasizing, really hammering in that the professor is showing his true colors, right? Kind of reminds me of like The Walking Dead. Everyone's ever seen it with the governor. Before the governor shows his true leaves, he dresses really cool. He has his cool jacket. But then once his true colors are revealed, all of a sudden his jacket turns into a trench coat. It's still a cool trench coat, but the total bad guy villain wardrobe. Anyways, the next quote I want to pay attention to, that I want to highlight, the Digimon, the equipment everyone used to interface with them, it was all under Professor Ruzenji's control. It was all right there in front of them, and worse, they agreed to the terms. I was always under DDL's control, Logomon said, trying to regain the last of the memory. It was coming back in fits and starts, but the demon wolf of the castle of 9 wolves recalled their capture in the wall slum at the hands of DDL employees. That, and the installation of a restraint tool in case the Digimon went berserk in the course of the experiment. They were as Finwer bound by Glyphonir and the legends of Ode. So right off the bat, that last statement was just a reference to Nordic legends. In case one is unaware, Finwer is one of the wolves. I think one of 2 wolves. I might be wrong about that, but just one of the wolves that's going to help cause Ragnarok. And so the wolf is chained up. And the chain that's used, the binding that's used to keep the wolf bound, it's named. I don't think I said it correctly the first time. Gleipnir. Gleipnir. I said it with an H, I think, the first time. So that's a cool little reference. How Logomon's being compared to that, since he's now being bound in the past, literally, and now right here it's both figuratively and literally, because he's actually bound, but also he lost his memory. And yeah, so to be honest with everyone, I just want to read that quote because I like it when stories has external mentions like this. And yeah, I guess the additional thing I wanted to say is I wish I could see the original translation because I'm curious. I'm going to assume that Logomon is a bit sad because of the use of ellipses here. I was always under DDO's control, ... Kind of him, maybe not sad, but just that realization that he was lacking agency. I wonder, instead of just saying Logomon said, maybe something along the lines of Logomon mused or Logomon reflected or something like that. But just a minor little detail. I just want to know specifically because it'll, I think, add to Logomon's personality. He's always, again, trying to put that gruff, strong shell around him. But we do know that when push comes to shove, he does care about the community. And also some things does get under his skin too. Moving forward. Excuse me, everyone, that's a hiccup. Let me put it a way you code crackers would understand. Your story has now become mine. It really is that simple. He wasn't physically present in any meaningful way, but he was now in control. He code cracked their story, their lives, and as long as their prototype Digimon remained the decryption key, it would be Professor Ruzenji who turned the page on this chapter. And as long as the prototype Digimon remained the decryption key, I feel like there's a typo right there. It would be Professor Ruzenji who turned the page on this chapter. Now watch closely. I'll do this one step at a time. He set to work. First, the data object connected to the interface on Doraemon's head and code began flowing between them, restoring part of the signal. What are you doing? Kosuke bellowed. I think it's obvious. I'm decrypting the source the source domain's code. It's only right that I be the one to do it, is it not? The professor said, glancing at Kosuke. Who better than Tamarari Ruzenji, foremost expert on the digital world, to take the next great leap in the field? Kosuke stood by helplessly while his partner Digimon was hijacked before his eyes. So, the statement I said earlier about the professor, apparently he doesn't really care about the Digimon. He seems to be more caring about his career. And this is what I meant when I said that. Who better than Tamanari Ryuzenji, foremost expert on the digital world, to take the next great leap in the field? So it makes me wonder, is this the only reason why he's doing this, the professor? It's because of his ego, essentially, since he was always one of the foremost of the research of the digital world and the digital monsters. He just wants to make sure that he remains, as he states, the foremost expert. If I remember correctly, they being the professor and his students, they were very close to being shut down. So that might explain some of the ego, right? The fact that he was able to make things turn around and was able to be quite successful. But I was just hoping for a little bit more of a purpose, more of a motive, not just wanting to remain the expert. I'm hoping that as we continue with the story that more will be revealed. And also, again, so Kosuke stood by helplessly while his partner Digimon was hijacked before his eyes. So even though we don't get a specific line with Kosuke speaking directly to Doraemon, I think that last line does imply that Kosuke is worried about Doraemon. Kosuke stood by helplessly while his partner Digimon was hijacked before his eyes. The fact that it's saying before his eyes, I feel implies that Kosuke is paying attention, he is watching. But honestly, for Kosuke, he has a lot more emotional investment in this situation. This was his plan, quote unquote. We know that it wasn't really his plan, but this was his plan from the get-go, and it was to rescue Saya. And he's so close, or I'm sure he feels like he's very close. But yet, despite being so close, as that saying goes, he's still quite far away. So he has a lot on his mind. But yeah. I also do like how essentially they're emphasizing that despite the professor not being there physically, don't think I'm going to read this part, but he's holowizing himself through the linker straps. Through all three linker straps, that's how he's appearing before Yolene, Kosuke, EG, and the Digimon. And it even states that his voice, and I'm going to assume as well, deduce that his voice and also his holowization was not as strong as the other individuals because they were actually directly connected to the linker strap. So I do like that detail. Kind of makes it spooky a little bit. I'm sure it's not, his voice is not cracking, but like if anyone's ever seen Digimon Ghost Game, like the episode where they're singing Happy Birthday and the voice will crackle a little bit. The phone will crackle a little bit wherever the voice was emanating from. That's how I'm kind of imagining it. So I'm putting in a little bit more extra spookiness essentially. Because his voice is fine. It may not be as clear, but if it was cracking and breaking up, I'm sure the story would have stated so. But essentially kind of like those old time radios is how I'm imagining it. Yeah, so also like he co-cracked their story, their lives, essentially reminding the readers that these individuals, the Digi-Police, Yolene, EG, and Kosuke, they thought they had their agency, that they were in control, but as it turns out, there was another individual who was controlling everything behind the scenes. And it is quite unfortunate too, because I would argue that Yolene and Kosuke, they had a lot of trust and, dare I say, faith in the professor, and the professor used them. I'm still hopeful that there's a strong reason for him doing so, but we'll have to wait and see. After the accident, I promised Kosuke I would look after him, even once he dropped out of school and left the company. I promised I would do the same for Yolene, whatever she decided to do after she left, Tomonari said, explaining his cover-up of the accident in an effort to protect his pupils' futures. The two of you made me proud of my decision to invest so much in you. So just think of this as me calling you the favor you owe me for granting you so much opportunity in life. This was the professor's big moment, his chance to usher in a revolution that would forever change humanity and the digital world. So I'm still interested about that line. Doraemon was saying something similar, that he wanted a revolution, but not for the real world, specifically for the digital world. And as it turns out, it's kind of looking like the professor has a similar, or not the same goal. His chance to usher in a revolution that would forever change humanity and the digital world. I'm really hopeful that we're going to get more information about that. It's about the third time that the story has mentioned a revolution. I want to know specifically what that entails, and maybe also how the digital world and apparently the human world, how that will look after the revolution occurs. So what will happen when it occurs, and how will the world look after it has happened? We also like about this, I'm not going to lie, as I said, I did like the professor's character. I am a little bit upset that he turns out to be the villain. But despite him being the villain, I am happy that they're still showing that he does have some care at the very least. The two of you may be proud, or even before this, I would say it states that he promised Kosuke to watch over him, and Oscar, and also Yolene. The two of you made me proud of my decision to invest so much in you. I think that's really cool. Again, just really emphasizing that he does respect these two individuals. Does he respect them enough to not use them or to not manipulate them? Unfortunately, not. But again, I'm just happy that at the very least there is respect that is present. For example, like Palpatine, I don't think from Star Wars, I don't think he had any respect for Count Dooku, nor, let's be honest, any respect for Darth Vader. Once he discovers Luke, Palpatine, I was going to say that Palpatine, Palpatine was really seriously considering Luke as his new apprentice. And let's be frank with ourselves, Luke did turn to the dark side. Palpatine would not have two apprentices. He for sure would have gotten rid of Darth Vader. So essentially what I'm trying to say is I'm glad the professor's not that much of a jerk. He's not Palpatine level of jerkiness. He's more... I can't think of a good example currently. But I guess more like the Arbiter and the Master Chief, in that at first the Arbiter looks like a villain, but he's not 100% a villain. But not as good, obviously. When I say not as good, I'm saying that the Arbiter is more good than the Professor, because at least the Arbiter, he starts off as a villain, turns into an anti-hero, then becomes a hero. The Professor goes from a nice individual to becoming the villain. So anyways, but... yeah, I'm happy to see that they're still making sure, they being the writers, are still making sure to put some care within the professor's mindset, that he still has some emotional connections to his two former students. Despite that, again, though, he obviously does have a big ego. This was the professor's big moment to start this revolution for the digital and human world. So why are you fighting Kosuke? They're on the same side. Like he said, Iji didn't know whose side he was on anymore. You're a fascinating young man, Iji. You appear completely oblivious, but you see everything so clearly at just the right time. What? Are you complimenting me? I like you. I like you. I really do. That's why I'm going to tell you everything. Even the things I've never told Kosuke. Okay. We'll start with the fact that I'm not the least bit interested in looking for that black Agumon. But that's your daughter's partner, Digimon. What do you mean you don't? You gave Kosuke the stimulant to... what? Iji felt like the bottom was dropping out of the whole world. Not the least bit interested, Kosuke said. He knew exactly what the professor meant by that turn of phrase. I mean it. What's lost is lost. The plan you've dedicated half your life to, Kosuke, is a monument to wasted effort, the professor bellowed. No, Tartarus. Think for a second. Don't let him break you, Doraemon shouted, struggling against the restraints. His lack of interest in the black Agumon and his own DMIA daughter had to be a ploy. Professor, Yolene interjected. What now? I've had a hunch for a long time. I can't stop thinking about it, no matter how hard I try, she said. Professor Rizzenji grinned. Your hunch may well be correct, officer. So, on my positive goodwill I had with the professor, well, stating how he's not, at least they give him a little bit more beyond the traditional villain. He's now acting like a traditional villain. The whole, he's smiling. As it turns out, he doesn't really care about his daughter 100%. So there's things to both like and dislike about this new page about the professor. Again, as I already stated, I just don't like the sudden shift in his characterization. With that being said, though, I am really appreciating as a reader the subject matter, at least. If one reads between the lines, essentially what's being stated here is that his daughter is dead. And Kosuke's aware about that. And that's why his reaction is the way that it is. He knew exactly what the professor meant by that turn of phrase. And then Yolene, she has her little hunch, right? So despite me not liking how the professor's acting, I do think the subject matter is really cool. And I think, again, being in the written format, it allows it to be a bit more mature versus had it been in the television format. And dare I say, I'm going to say it, even the manga format, because some of the things that my mental images, the mental pictures that I create are sometimes a bit dark because of the diction that's involved in the story and the narration. I'm not going to count this part with the whole voice crackling, because as I said, it's never stated that his voice goes in and out with the totalization, the professor's totalization. But in previous parts, when the darker set pieces were described, like when Saya comes out of her mind link, and she's vomiting and everything like that, or when the Hell Logomon was biting on Koichimon and the way that the data was spilling out, more described as blood. versus the way that it's typically depicted in other in the anime. I feel like because there were pictures, if pictures were present, they would also have to draw Saya being dead. And I'm kind of jumping the gun, but later on in the story, the professor does pull up an image of Saya, and supposedly that's a fake image, that it's not real and that she's actually been dead. So again, even though I don't like how the professor's acting, I think the subject matter is really great. And it did catch me off guard. I totally thought that Saya was still alive. And it wouldn't shock me if she is alive. This is just a misdirection. But she doesn't. Just the fact that they're implying this in the first place, I think it's really awesome as a story point, from a storytelling perspective. What I also like about this quote is, of course, now we see the Digimon showing their care for the human partners. The way that Doraemon reacts. No, Todorus, think for a second. Don't let him break you, Doraemon shouted, struggling against the restraints. Again, I know I keep saying it, but I'm always a big fan when they show the care between the human and their digital partner. But yeah, so this just really reveals a lot, and it's actually quite sad. I also do like, at the very least, that the professor does review that he has respect not just for Saya and Kosuke, but also for Eiji. And obviously, he must respect Eiji at some level, because if this was the grand plan the professor had, he wouldn't just give Logomon to any individual, to any random person. He would give it to someone who is skilled, talented, and clever enough to handle a Digimon like Logomon. So again, I do like that he shows respect, just don't like his behavior, acting like your typical villain. But yeah, going to the last quote. The form of a small dinosaur-like Digimon floated before his eyes. It didn't look black. In and of itself so much as the image itself appeared to be monochrome, like a creature from an old movie given three-dimensional form. As I suspected, even if the mind linker perishes, the partner Digimon doesn't suffer the same fate. Professor Rugenzi said clinically. Wait, what did you just say? Ichi stammered. The words replayed over and over in his head. Even if the mind linker perishes, Yolene said, her heart dropping as the hunch she'd done her best not to entertain proved to be true. She's dead. Professor Rugenji opened a virtual monitor above his head. A video feed of Saya ensconced in a capsule full of colored fluid appeared before them. Saya! Yolene cried, tears rolling in her eyes. The image blinked out of existence like an old tube television turning off. It was all fake. Oh yes, for quite some time now. And that's how this part ends for chapter 4. So just again, to reiterate, while I wasn't the biggest fan of this reveal that the professor was the villain, I was really hopeful that the voice in the previous part belonged to the Black Agumon or a new entity of some kind. But I had a sinking suspicion that it will be the professor. And even though that did turn out to be true, I am liking where the story is going. So despite me not being happy who the villain is, I am still very much enjoying Digimon Seekers. Would I encourage people to continue reading? Personally, yeah, I would, and hopefully you guys feel the same way. My question for this video is going to be, how do you guys feel about the professor's reveal? Do you think there might be more to the his villainous colors? We find out there's maybe someone, in the same way that he's puppeteering the protagonist, maybe he's being puppeteered as well. Maybe someone's pulling his strings. I won't lie with everyone. I am hopeful that it's something along those lines. I'm still hopeful that maybe he'll be an anti-hero and he'll end up helping the group. And I'm still curious. I know at this point I should probably just assume they're gone from the story, but I'm also still hopeful that Tentomon and Palmon, Kosuke and Yolene's original digital partners, I'm still hopeful that they'll make a reappearance as well. Again, my dream is that, as silly as it sounds, is that everyone's being beat down and all of a sudden Tentomon and Palmon just appear and Yolene and Kosuke just look all happy and excited, but also sad because maybe they had to sacrifice themselves or something like that. I know it sounds, after me talking about tropes and stereotypes, I know that's a very just stereotypical reintroduction of past characters, right? But again, I wouldn't mind that. But yeah, so I'm still enjoying where the story's going. I'm still excited for next week, especially because I do want to know if Saya is truly dead or not. And I'm also curious about the Black Agumon then. Obviously, the professor just brought in the Black Agumon because the source domain, it's working as a kind of like a search function. He was able to find the Postmon, and then he also brings out the Black Agumon, but he just told the group and the audience that he doesn't care about the Black Aquaman. So I think he's just doing that just to get the objective of the Sons of Chaos out of the way and to move forward from there. But yeah, thank you so much for listening and watching. I do appreciate it, everyone. Have a prodigious day and take care.